the women in non-West, that all of them are, they were constructed in this monolithic terms, and the women here were considered to be the most liberated, they were considered to be most empowered, and the rest, from Afghanistan to India to Africa, everyone was seen as one homogeneous block. And again, this is kind of going very far, somewhere in the 80s, late 70s, thinking about the production of the third world women. Of course, this has been replaced by thinking about post-colonial feminism and also transnational feminism and also decolonial feminism. But just to kind of establish this, that Western analysts had discursively colonized and ghettoized non-Western women. And they had become this collective other, as if all of them were one group, with notwithstanding that all of them are different cultures, all of them are different religions, all of them have different relations with their own local patriarchies and cultural patriarchies and religious patriarchies. All of them are living in different political systems as this one universal categories. So this is what I actually wanted us to land, which is decolonizing our minds, or decolonial feminist praxis. What does that even mean? So decoloniality is analyzing the matrix of power created by processes and aftermath of colonization and settler colonialism. And I know this kind of looks very different from an Indian vantage where you are standing right now, and where I am. It looks different in the sense because I'm thinking through the matrix of power that has been created on the indigenous communities here, the First Nations here. If you think about Hawaii, which is also kind of dealing with a settler colonialism that US imposed on it, and you think about the First Nations and genocide, from that, you kind of get this idea of the processes of colonization and settler colonialism, which the American culture established on what was Turtle Island, the original name for this continent. So what does decolonial, let me just move this. What does decolonial approach mean? It means that you're using methods and movements that strive colonial and settler colonial logic and the seeming naturalness of racial capitalism. And how do, again, if I see it from a Kashmiri vantage, or from a Kashmir vantage, I can kind of see the settler colonial logic when I think about the Indian, the Indian hold over Kashmir, the Indian control over Kashmir, and the seemingly naturalness of racial capitalism. From this vantage, when I see the effect and impact of that on the First Nations, and now after 2019, you kind of see that more clearly in Kashmir. So decolonial approaches for you would be to disrupt the colonial and settler colonial logic. So how would that look for, let's say, through an Indian vantage? You're actually disrupting the colonial and settler colonial feminist theory, basically. Maybe not settler colonial because they're not there, but the Eurocentric colonial theory is still there. So I think to disrupt that is very, very important, especially if you think through the post-colonial lenses. I feel like post-colonialism, as much as it exposed what colonization had done, it also invisibilized issues like Kashmir, because issue like Kashmir was nowhere in post-colonial situations and things that emerged, because it was seen as if it had already settled, and now you had this post-colony that was kind of coming up, and it was this modern democracy and all of that. So I think, I don't know if this is moving. So decolonial feminism essentially is a revisionist movement which analyzes Western and white liberal feminism and different understandings of feminism. So in that sense, we are actually talking about feminist theory or feminisms that are very local, and that's what I look at. What does feminism mean in context of Kashmir? Does it look like white liberal feminism? Does it look like Black feminism? What does it look like? And all feminisms possibly are a response to local patriarchies, to regional patriarchies, to political patriarchies as well. So that's where I wanted to locate this idea of thinking about conflict and gender justice. So what does decolonial feminism believe in? it seeks to, it first and foremost brings our understanding to the fact that feminism that we kind of see, especially the liberal feminism, it has been co-opted by the forces that feminism probably at some point was seeking to dismantle, especially thinking through capitalistic neoliberal modes. So feminists should no longer be accomplices of capitalism, racism, colonialism, imperialism, and it's time to fight the system that created the hegemony of hierarchy, that built the prisons and polices women's bodies. So that's what decolonial feminism is. It kind of reminds feminists, it kind of reminds not just feminists here, but feminists all over the world, that you are not an accomplice of capitalism, racism, colonialism, and imperialism. And then also thinking about that the central issue in feminist debates today is Eurocentrism and whiteness, to power and inclusion and exclusion. And those are the debates that are going on. And how will you have those in India? You will think about the Malayas of Hindu supremacy. You will think about Muslims right now, the way they are under siege. You will think about Kashmir, the way it has been controlled and occupied in the last 72 years. And you will also think about inclusion and exclusion of not just, the biggest minority Muslims, but also the other minorities and other disadvantaged communities like the Dalits and Christians and the indigenous people. So that is part of the decolonial feminist attitude and praxis. And I think that's where that's where I locate myself. I cannot see myself and my work in post-colonial feminism anymore, because I feel like post-colonialism as a theory has really hidden a lot, then especially when it comes to situations like Kashmir. It's not as if something was already settled after the colonists left and now you have a post-colony that's kind of gathering itself. No, it was left in a manner where most of the frontiers were aflame, and this was not what the people had expected, but this was something that had been left for them, and it was a conflagration basically. And it is a feminist issue. When you think about conflict and you think about war, it's a feminist issue. And when I say feminism, I don't only mean women. And I think that's another thing that many non-Western nations have to grapple with, that when we think about feminist theory, in this moment, especially in decolonial feminism, you're not only thinking about women, you're also thinking about men, because you're also thinking about other genders, because these are complementary factors in a society. And many times when I get asked this question about Kashmir, that,